One of the first things that you learn in Battle Cats is meat shielding. This is something that a lot of players first learn when fighting the Chapter 3 Moon's boss, Teacher Bun Bun. You'd spam a lot of cheap, fast cooldown units whose sole job is to just go in and sacrifice themselves for the sake of stalling the enemy. Meat shielding is very useful on majority of enemies in the game, but that's not the only way that you can stall enemies in the game. Another common way to do it is by tanking. Tanking generally requires, well, tankers, units with extremely high health points. Like meat shielding, the point of tanking is usually to just stall the enemies. However, tanking and meat shielding have different use cases. Meat shielding works for a majority of common enemies in the game, but it can be less effective on enemies with extremely fast attack speed that can tear through your meat shields, or if the enemies have piercing attacks like Omnistrike or wave attacks. Generally, tankers are usually better suited for these enemies. Focusing on big health over a number of units means that it can withstand weaker hits for a longer amount of times. Besides that, meat shielding might also have gaps where the enemies can push through in between your cat's cooldown, but tankers will always perfectly stall the enemies as long as the tanker itself is still alive. Meat shielding do usually work better on most stages though, since a lot of stages have really high damage output and most tankers would usually just melt from hard-hitting enemies or from enemies that they are not specialized against. In between those are also tanky meat shields that has the benefit from both sides like Manic Eraser, Ramen, or Wushu. These type of units are usually not as spammable or as cheap as common meat shield and also not as tanky as proper tankers, but they do have the benefit from both sides still. But the one that I want to focus on today is pure tankers. There's quite a lot of these spongy tanky units that's down to soak some beatings for you, and today I want to talk about a certain tanker that I would say is rather underappreciated and is rarely ever talked about at all. But there's a lot of tankers in the game. Which unit would I be talking about, you ponder to yourself? Could it be Luminala with her extreme resistance against alien and her great all-rounder stats? Or maybe it's Hades who has the biggest health in the game? Or maybe it's the sturdy Kai with her resistance against floating and immunity to knockback effect? Maybe it's a Rocat with its short cooldown and great HP as well as being able to resist and weaken red enemies? Or perhaps it's Zamboni with its immunity to all debuffs and the unique property of not moving after attacking? Or is it just the Titan Cats whose usages have been long forgotten? But well, it's not one of those legend rare units. It's not one of those uber rare units that I've mentioned either. It's also not one of the super rares. And it's not actually one of the rare units. And it's not one of the special units. Is it a basic unit? No, it's not a basic unit either. That's right. This unit that I'm talking about is, well, it's not exactly a unit. Because the tanker that I want to talk about today is your very own cat base. That's right, let's talk about the cat base and its capability to tank. First of all, what is the cat base? The cat base is, well, it's your cat base. If your cat base health reaches 0, you lose. Just in case you haven't played this game before for some reason and you don't know about that, I don't know why you're watching this video, but whatever. The cat base starts with moderate HP at the start and is able to be upgraded in the upgrade menu up to the level of level 30, where it will have a total of 78,000 HP. Collecting the relevant story mode treasures can also increase the base health up to 140,000 HP. And then a Toto development team can further increase your base health again, where it will have a total of 236,000 health at max upgrade. This health is pretty high compared to most units in the game. Maybe it's not as high as like Hades, who has like 425,000 health at level 30, but it is similar to the likes of more general tankers like Kai, who has 193,000 health at level 30. On a case-by-case scenario, you can also increase this base health using cat combos. A medium base health up cat combo already increased your base health by 50%, which is already pretty big. So your cat base can actually have a pretty gigantic amount of health. But whoa, okay, hold on a second here, dial it back. Isn't it still weird to consider your cat base as a tanker? I mean, the whole point of the game is to not want to get your cat base hit at the first place, right? Wouldn't it be counterproductive to use your base as a tank? Well, no, technically there's no actual disadvantage of having your base getting hit as long as your base doesn't actually die. The cat base can still provide some defense and some advantages that can be helpful even if it is a risky play. Base tanking is actually a strat as old as the average age of the player base. One of the earliest example I can think of when it comes to base tanking is from Nurse Wufa's Volcanic Defender video. Watching this video was probably also the first time I learned about base tanking too. Volcanic Defender stage starts off with a couple of shy boys instantly, and then we'll have a Bun Bun spawning later on. While the shy boys themselves aren't really powerful, you do need to kill them fast before Bun Bun arrives so that you can get enough cash and space for dealing with the Bunbun. Dealing with the Shy Boys without certain gacha units can be difficult. Shy Boy pushes pretty hard and you need to kill them quick. Higher range units like Paris or Dragon Cats are generally safe from Shy Boy attacks, but they don't really have enough damage to kill them fast enough before Bunbun arrives. And if the Shy Boys are still alive when Bunbun is here, chances are you're not gonna have enough money to actually deal with the Bunbun. Meanwhile, lower range units like UFO Cat are usually a good way to burst down Shy Boy fast, but these units just barely outrange Shy Boys, so Shy Boys can easily tear through them fast, and any meat shields that are trying to protect them can also be demolished. Protecting them aren't easy. You could use tanker units like Sadako to protect them, but at the time, Sadako was a very new unit and it's a super rare at that. A lot of players might not really have this unit yet, so guide makers generally avoid using it. And so Nurse Wufa's solution to this is base tanking. Nurse Wufa did not really meat shield the Shy Boys at all, he just let the Shy Boy hit his own base. But as the Shy Boys are chewing through his base, he just keeps on stacking UFO Cats on the Shy Boy. He doesn't spawn any meat shields or any defensive unit whatsoever, he just focuses all of his money into spawning UFO Cats. With its short cooldown, you can stack enough UFO Cats to eventually kill off all of the Shy Boys before your base dies, and then you'll have enough money and space to deal with the Bunbun. And you can see that in this case, the base gives quite a big amount of advantages. For one, well, it's good tanking. It's a perfect stall and a perfect defense for a risky unit like UFO. And second of all, it saves some slot in your lineup and it even saves money. Your cat base is not a unit that you need to bring, nor is it a unit that you need to spawn. You do not need any money to actually have this on the field, and you do not need to sacrifice any slot in your lineup for this strategy to work. So immediately you can already tell that base tanking has some pretty nice properties to them. It's a good free defense that is accessible to every players. Outside of this particular case, there's still loads more advantages to base tanking. The fact that you do not need to bring or spawn the cat base also means that the cat base is a unit that bypasses restrictions and cat limits. So whether it be Cosmos stages or 4 crowns or like dual stages, cat base protection is always there regardless of your restrictions. Even if dual stages limits you to only have one unit on the field, you can still use your cat base to protect your rusher units. Normally that would be impossible since you would need multiple units on the field, but the cat base doesn't really count as a cat, so it's an extra defensive protection without actually taking up your cat limit. There's also maybe like Colosseum stages that limit certain resources, like how many cat units you can spawn or how much money you can use. Then the cat base will always be there as an optional defensive measure for your units without needing to spend any of your limited resources. No money spent and no cat limit being consumed. Even if the cat base is just sitting there without attacking and doing no damage, just having it to tank some hits can be a very vital and nice support. Besides, the fact that the cat base doesn't attack can also be taken advantage of. Sometimes keeping enemies alive can be key for certain strategies, usually when you want to like stack units up. In these situations, you'd want to keep some frontline enemies alive as long as possible to give yourself more time to stack units up. However, you still want to defend yourself from the enemies, and the cat base can give you that protection without needlessly damaging the enemy you're stacking units on. You can technically also use like slow, low damaging semi-tankers like erasers, but base tanking just allows this strategy to be used without needing to bring specific meat shields, and so it's generally more accessible. Plus, base tanking also wouldn't push the enemies if they get knocked back like erasers would. Sometimes you want the extra space between you and the enemy before engaging with them, so having a protection that does not move can also be pretty helpful. Sometimes some peons are so weak that even erasers can kill them, so the base doing absolutely zero damage can be very nice. Plus, there are also times where you might want to keep certain really weak peons alive for the sake of stacking up LD units. LD units, or long distance units, are units that are able to pierce a longer range than their standing range, but they generally have a blind spot close to them. This blind spot can be taken advantage of. If you keep some weak small range enemies alive, it would allow you to indefinitely stack up LD units before you engage on the main battle. Or this could simply extend the range of the units that you use. You could be fighting enemies near the base while also having a stepping stone enemy, and your cat base would allow the stepping stone enemy to survive, while at the same time also giving protection to your LD units. Base tanking is perfect for stacking up LD units, as your units would still need some sort of defense while at the same time keeping the stepping stone enemy alive as long as you want. Cat base doing no damage and not knocking enemies back can also have a lot of other advantages, like when you want to land some quote-unquote important hits. An example that I sometimes use is if you want to get like double cash drop from Can on a weak peon like Gabriel or Dark Doges. These enemies can get knocked back very easily, but you can just let the cat base take the hit to protect your can. Okay, well, you also technically can also just meat shield, but sometimes you might not bring certain meat shields with you, or maybe the enemies are pushing a little bit too hard that normal meat shields might not cut it, and you might have to bring stronger meat shields. But stronger meat shields like ramen might actually end up knocking the peons back, so it's just a neat little thing to allow your cat base to tank some hits for the sake of some stronger attacks to actually land. This is also good if you want to land some singular powerful hits like from Bahamut or Divine Coup, who easily misses their attacks. But you can let certain key enemies stay at your base while you let these units finish their attack animation, and the cat base would both defend the unit and ensure them to not miss their attack in the process. This also works on a smaller scale like for Slime or Pizza. These units aren't really terribly hard to land attacks with, but their attacks are generally pretty deadly. You don't want to miss them a lot of the times. This is part of the basis on why playing close to the base in floor 30 is very useful. Units behind the base are always safe from the peons and can land meaningful hits to clean peon waves more accurately. Also, I have a video talking in depth about floor 30 and why it's the best stage in the game, so watch that video if you're interested. But anyways, a more modern example of a stage would probably be the Bahamut Talent Unlock stage, where in the stage you want to deal with a Shibalian as quickly as possible. But certain units like Chillcat or Can might have a really long attack startup, and they both needs to be protected. In these cases, you can just let Shibalian hit your base so that you can have a clean shot using these units. Your base will take some chip damage in the process, but dealing with the Shibalian quick is the key to defeating the stage. I also have a video talking about this stage that shows this example more clearly, so go watch that video too if you're interested. Another specifically particularly interesting case is with Cat Chops, especially pre-True Form Cat Chops. Cat Chops is a very powerful debuffer cat unit. His attack has the ability to reduce any enemy's damage to a mere 1% of its original power. The catch is, aside from his single target, his speed is a mere 1. His True Form does quadruple his speed, but it's still pretty slow. Normally, Cat Chops has an extremely hard time being utilized in battle due to his horrendous speed, but fighting at the cat base works wonder for him. For one, having enemies on the base means that the Cat Chops will immediately engage with the main enemy. And another thing is that Cat Chops still really needs protection. Even with the enemy being weakened to 1% health, Cat Chops cannot really tank much hits, and his weaken isn't really permanent. And the cat base is a perfect combination with him. Not only does the cat base give him protection, but the weakening effect also allows your cat base to survive for a long amount of time too. It's a win-win for both Cat Chops and the base. Cat Chops protect the base, and the base protects Cat Chops. Now, those are all cool and dandy, but I think a lot of these properties are something that might not be super unique just for the cat base. You can technically still replicate a lot of these stuff with other tankers as long as you're playing close to the base. But there's still many other interactions that are unique specifically to the cat base. One of those unique interactions are against zombie enemies. Many zombies are able to burrow through your units, but not the cat base. Zombies will always unburrow if it detects the cat base is in their range. This might sound scary, but this can also be taken advantage of. For one, this means that any of the units that are behind the cat base are always safe from the zombies no matter what. They can't get attacked by the zombies unless they have LD, and the zombies wouldn't really burrow past them either. And two, it makes zombies' unburrowing position to be much more predictable. Different zombies have different burrowing range, and it might be difficult to keep track on who will go where. But since every zombies will always unburrow at your base, they basically burrow more or less at the same place, and planning ahead and dealing with the zombies together would be much easier. Not only that, these are also very beneficial if you're using anti-zombie Ubers that relies on their backwards Omnistrike. Units like Terme or Ether, even if they have backwards Omnistrike, lots of zombies can burrow so far that even these units wouldn't be able to catch them with their backwards attack. But fighting near the base and cutting the zombies' burrow distance shorter allows them to actually catch these zombies easier. It's part of the reason on why Doom Engine Pandora is so really good anti-zombie. Since Pandora is an extremely slow unit, it generally means that they would take a very long amount of time before it even leaves the cat base. But as long as it's near the base, it will always reach any zombies that tries to unburrow near your base. And that's all thanks to cat base's special properties. Aside from zombie burrowing, another case of unique enemy interaction with the cat base are against LD and Omnistrike enemies. Both LD cats and enemies have a unique way of checking range when it comes to their opposition's base. I also have already explained this in a pretty old video talking about long distance and Omnistrike, which you can also give watch if you're interested. Now, normally LD units would stop moving like how any other units would, which is that they're going going to detect a valid target within their standing range, and then they stop. But against bases, they will actually ignore any bases that are on their standing range, and would only stop advancing if the base is in their inner hit area. It's a bit hard to explain, you might just want to look at the chart of the screen right now. What this means is that enemies being this close means that it's much easier for you to time your units to enter their blind spot. Once you lure an LD enemy this close, any cat unit that manages to just get out of the base is automatically inside that enemy's blind spot. This makes it so much easier for you to build up a stack of units inside the blind spot, which hopefully would be enough momentum to deal with everything else in the stage. Aside from that, these range interaction also allows for some shenanigans with certain enemies that have a very low inner LD range. Some enemies will end up being forced to move so much closer to your base than usual. The Bahamut chaining strat on Doremi is one of the most common example of this, as Doremi is forced to move very close to Bahamut due to her not being able to detect the cat base from her standing range, and Bahamut is able to just lift through all of this and keep on chaining Doremi over and over because Bahamut is still protected from the peons thanks to the cat base's defense. Speaking of LD and Omnistrike, Omnistrike behaves differently when it comes to bases. As opposed to LD units, Omnistrike units will always try to hit from the farthest range possible instead of the closest range. So enemies like Yulala or Wing Piggy or Dogumaru will always be far apart from your base, which would make them harder to approach because of their extended effective range. Usually this is not a situation where you want to put yourself into, but this can also still be taken advantage of. Omnistrike enemies can't hit units that are behind your base, so any units that are behind your base will always be safe from their attacks. A lot of Omnistrike enemies are often paired with other short-range enemies, and the Omnistriker enemies are usually used to disrupt the cat units that you have that are supposed to counter the other enemy. Sometimes what you can do is you just lure both of these enemies close to your base, where your cat units are safe from the Omnistrike enemy. Then you can deal with a shorter range enemy first with the help of your cat base's protection. Then, after dealing with a shorter range enemy, you can push the Omnistrike enemies back, where it would be much easier to deal with alone without any other supports. It is risky to get your base chipped off, but the extra protection your units have behind the base are often more worth it in the end. While it is generally not a smart idea to lure most Omnistrike enemies, it definitely still has its merits, so keep those sort of stuff in mind. By the way, did you know that you've probably also done a bit of base tanking yourself without even realizing? You ever got one of those situations where the enemies are already hitting your base, but you managed to push the enemies back and ended up winning? Yeah, on those sort of situations, the cat base might have given you just enough protection and advantages for you to just get the momentum that you need, and you might be utilizing base tanking without knowing all along. Of course, being more aware of this would be definitely better, since you would be able to take advantage of base tanking to the fullest and in a more proper way. If you are aware that your base is already protecting your units, then you can just, stop spawning defensive units like meat shielding and just focus all of your money on damagers to actually push the enemies away from your base. I have seen many players being put in this situation and would often just panic and put all of their money on meat shield or tankers and stuff, but the point of meat shielding and those defensive units are usually to stop enemies from hitting your base at the first place. But if the enemies are already hitting your base, then there's not much point in wasting your monies in meat shielding. Just put all of your money in damagers, and hopefully you have enough damage to knock the enemies back. Spawning meat shielding in this sort of situation would not really help the player, and this player could be you. So keep what I said in mind. These sort of stuff happens more often than you think. I'm sure there's a lot of other applications of base tankings that I haven't covered, but I imagine you more or less get the idea by now. This video's not quite as structured as most other videos that I've made. I'm basically just listing off things you can do with base tanking, but maybe it's easier to understand this way, I don't know. Base tanking in general is just a pretty fun topic to dive into, and I think it's one of those things that not a lot of people talk about. Maybe it's because it's a very case-to-case scenario kind of deal that is just difficult to generalize. So hey, with what you've learned in this video, you too might be able to take advantage of your base to the fullest and appreciate the health of your cat base more than before. Seriously, upgrade your cat base health. It's actually way more useful than you think. But yeah, I think that's about it for cat base and base tanking. If you have any thoughts or questions, maybe some personal experience with base tanking, leave a comment down below, and I hope you've enjoyed this video and maybe learned a thing or two. Also like, comment, or subscribe or whatever. And yeah, that's about it. I'll catch you another time. See ya.